As far as the five that I was talking about, corporations, there's subsets of that. You've got your general partnership, as I was talking about with Mr. Harrell. You've got the limited partnership, limited liability partnership, and the limited liability company. So why would you want to get into one of those? Once again, it comes down to two things. Limited liability, when you're in business for yourself, you basically put the assets in the company and you say the company is now a living, breathing thing. And this living, breathing thing operates a business. It has income coming in, it has services or it produces something, and it has things going out. So you want that kind of protection. The most important thing that I think most people think about when they think about an entity is the tax structure. I don't want to get taxed. I want to be taxed as little as possible. I want to have all the flow-through advantages of being in some kind of entity that'll give me that. That's why I say I'm not going to get into that aspect of it. I think that if you are dealing with a tax accountant or someone who does your taxes, that is more important for you to talk to them as to how that's going to work. Now, the different structures have different features in them. I won't get into too many details, but when you're talking about a limited liability partnership, you have to have something called a general partnership. They have to accept some of the responsibility for all the individuals, just like a general partnership would. You do get some of the protections as far as individually, and I mean like they're going to sue me individually. Like I said, we tend to look at things from the perspective of everything's going to go bad, so we need to find ways to actually make things, protect us from these types of things that might go bad. So you always look at that protection. Now, the structure for a limited liability company, you have some of the same structures and some of the same features, but it doesn't make you responsible for certain types of contracts. I would ask you, if you're going to look into these types of structures, either a LLP, limited liability partnership, or a limited liability company, I would ask you get with your attorney or your accountant. Your accountant can advise you on some of these aspects and decide on which one is probably best for you. I will mention two types of corporations that are specific to professionals. There's one called a PA, a professional association, that applies only to doctors, and there's a PC, professional corporation, that only applies to lawyers. There's different types of structures, but sometimes you'll see attorney something PC, attorney something LLP. It just depends on the type of structure that they want to set up. And that's what a lot of people do. You can get very creative with these types of LLCs or LLPs, but that's generally, the reason that people generally get into them is, like I said, for tax reasons and for limited liability. I want to do business as the entity itself. I have my house, my car, and I don't want anybody to sue me if a contract goes bad and take those things from me. Now, I have to explain to you that even in Texas, we have great, what they call exemption laws. We get to protect a lot of things like unlimited homestead protection. You get up to $30,000 or $60,000 of protection for household items. I generally advise people when they come in to see me, I want to get into an LLC, and they have no clue. Well, why an LLC? Well, because, and I get these small business people, and they say, well, so-and-so Fabricators has an LLC, and I want one like them. Well, what are we talking about? How many employees? How many assets are we talking about? Are you subject to exposure? Do you have 2 or 3 homes? Do you have 6 or 7 cars? Do you have a lot of stuff? Well, no, I'm just getting started. Okay, so why would you need something like that? And generally what I'll do is I'll refer them to an insurance person, and I'll say, look, call your insurance agent if you have one. Talk to them about possibly doing some kind of liability policy. A general business liability policy that'll cover you for any accidents or anything that might happen. You don't necessarily need the structure. If they start getting employees, if they start getting assets, and they do want to have some protection, then I'll recommend possibly an S Corp or an LLC. Something fairly simple, keep it simple so that they can manage it. Now, I was talking about creating these different types of entities. I think one of the most important aspects is not just getting into the entity and saying, okay, I'm in here, I'm protected, that's all I'm going to do. What I see as a bankruptcy attorney, I see this a lot. Things go wrong in the business, especially here in the last year or so. A lot of businesses have failed. A lot of people are struggling to get by. So they come to me and I see that they have some business, in, some kind of business formation, an S Corp, LLC, LLP. And this is why I said I do more getting people out of these things so that I can file them in bankruptcy or so that I can do workouts than I do getting them in. One of the problems I always see is that nobody keeps their corporate formalities. And by that I simply mean you have to have minutes, you have to have meetings, you have to have, when you make decisions, I'm going to buy some things and I'm going to put it in the corporation's name. You got to have something in your, and I always tell people the easy, if you really want to keep it simple, just keep a notebook. And if you, and it's usually one person, two people, I think the largest LLC that I represent has 10 members. I say get together and simply say, you can do it on the phone, hey, we want this. Or exchange an email between all of you where you say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to expend X amount to buy this asset. We're going to change the title and put it in the company's name. Something to put in your records and keep it going. If you do that when you're trying to dissolve, when you're trying to undo the business, it's always a little bit easier. Plus, you also keep track of what's going on. Another important aspect of once you get into a company, or once you create this entity, is making sure that you're paying your taxes, that you're following those formalities. Because when businesses start getting in trouble, some of those things start to lack. And when they start to lack, it's harder to get out of them. You have to do more to try to get out of them. You see the lawsuits start trying to fly, people getting into it, and they don't necessarily understand the aspect, or at least some of the ramifications of creating it, but not being able to undo it, or at least having the Secretary of State, issuing certificates that you can't open another company or anything like that. So, for me, I think as nice as it is to be able to get into a company, I think it's also very important to be able to maintain it, operate it while you're in there. Certain of the things that I was talking about is simply the operation aspect of it, the formalities, making sure that you're keeping your records, your minutes, understanding that owners are going to come in, owners are going to go out. If it's a small company, usually involves friends or family, you have to try to keep everything in writing. I know that sounds kind of tedious and hard, but I'm telling you from my perspective, it is always better that everybody be aware, or at least have it in writing, as to what everyone is either required to do or what everyone is expected to contribute to that business. I think that pretty much does it. Like I said, the main things to focus on when you're deciding on which type of company you're going to select is what kind of tax structure you want and what kind of liability you're looking for. Any questions?